The DFS lineup generator is your roadmap to winning DFS cash. It starts with our award-winning projections we update throughout the week, right up until kickoff. Here's exactly what you'll get beyond that. Ceiling projections to highlight those guys with the boom potential to win you a large field tournament. Dollars per point projections give you an easy way to find the top values at every position. Projected ownership for every player shows you who's going to be chalky, appearing in tons of lineups, and which potential studs might be going overlooked. And of course, the lineup generator itself uses all those factors and more to build up to 150 lineups in just seconds. Ready to learn how to use it? Here we go. Step 1 is setting your strategy. You'll want to customize your strategy to get different from the competition, and we provide several categories to help you do just that. Set top projected points. This field simply sets how many players from our rankings you want to consider for your lineup building. Only want to include the top 6 projected QBs? Put a 6 in the QB field. Want to leave tight end open to fit around the rest of your build? Put a bigger number there. As you go, keep in mind that you need to fit salaries together in building your lineup, and the higher ranked players are more likely to carry big salaries. So make sure you leave the lineup generator enough flexibility to actually build viable lineups. You can narrow down further with other settings. Set projected ceiling points per dollar. This option is similar to the last one. The difference? Now we're comparing players by value on the specific platform. Rather than ranking players by projected total points, we're looking at each guy's ceiling projection divided by his salary for that specific DFS platform. That will pull more low salary players up the rankings and allow you to narrow your player pool further, if you want. Of course, if you're not satisfied with the resulting lineups, you can always come back and adjust your settings further. Set top projected points versus projected ownership. Too much chalk can kill your tournament lineup. You don't want to automatically avoid all popular players, but you should be trying to work in at least a player or two who are likely to be low owned. Use this field to increase or decrease the number of players you want in the pool when normalized by their projected ownership. By default, this will be populated with our typical lineup starting point. Play with the settings to find your optimal approach. Set highest TDs per dollar. Want to get more touchdown upside? You can increase the number of quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, or wide receivers in the player pool by adding those with the projected highest TD ratio per dollar. This field can be especially helpful for half PPR formats such as FanDuel and Yahoo, as opposed to the full PPR scoring of DraftKings. That's because less scoring for receptions means greater scoring impact for touchdowns. Set easiest matchups or most difficult matchups. These next two fields can be used to add players with the projected easiest matchups and eliminate players with the hardest matchups. The settings use our exclusive adjusted fantasy points allowed metric to highlight players in a blow-up spot and those with bust potential. Set minimum projected points. This is probably our most used field. You can set the minimum amount of projected points needed for a player to be included in your player pool. Projected fantasy scores will differ by site because of scoring variations. We recommend creating unique strategies for each DFS site you play on to maximize the value of this setting. Finally, make sure you don't set your scoring bars too high. Remember that you need to include enough players and enough salary flexibility to allow for as many lineups as you hope to build. These final few fields further dictate how the algorithm can use your player pool to generate lineups. Max from team sets the maximum number of players from a single NFL team allowed in a lineup. You'll typically want this in the 2 to 4 range to allow for stacking possibilities. Max exposure percent controls your overall exposure to individual players. Set it higher if there are certain guys you want to play in a lot of lineups. Set it low if you want to spread your exposure. Percent salary used. Set the minimum percentage of the site salary cap you want each generated lineup to use, because your best lineup doesn't necessarily include maxing out that cap. If you are only making a couple of lineups or building for cash games, set this number close to 100%. If you're trying to create 150 lineups and win a tournament, drop down to around 95% to help differentiate your lineup from others. Don't like the results? Adjust that percentage and regenerate your lineups. The Avoid Opposing Defense button keeps you from building lineups that include offensive players going against your defense. Sure, sometimes you can get different by playing such combos in the same lineup, but there will more often be a negative correlation between offensive players and a team defense that are facing each other. The Force QB wide receiver stack and Force QB tight end stack settings do just that. They'll force each lineup to include a wide receiver or tight end from your QB's team. Not If Injury Report will remove all players with an out or doubtful status. We remove such players from the rankings once those game statuses come out, but just consider this button to be lineup insurance. Exposure percents is an optional step, but gives you a lot of flexibility on who you want, and maybe who you don't want, to be in your lineups. You can set a player's exposure percent to 0 to guarantee he won't crack your lineup, or any number between 1 and 100% to force them into a corresponding share of lineups. Don't forget you can reset all exposure percentages by clicking the trash can in the upper right corner. Once you have set your rules and exposures, you're ready to build some lineups. Simply set the number of lineups you want and hit Generate Lineups. Now it's time to export and upload your winning lineups to their platform. After you generate your lineups, mark the ones you want with the checkboxes. Then click Save Selected, then View Export Saved Lineups. From there, select the site and slate from the dropdown. Mark the checkboxes of the lineups you want to export, and click Export Lineups. You'll then have an uploadable CSV file for your DFS site. You can log into DraftKings or FanDuel and upload that CSV. From there, all that's left to do is win. Draft Sharks, your unfair advantage.